you gotta lie to the people. Big yourself up. Okay, so we have Shaggy on monsters versus Wang ID on monsters. So Carapace versus Arachaswim. Shaggy on blue coin. Wang ID on red coin. Monster mash. Let's go.
Yeah. So Keltalis, of course, has that ability to find, hopefully, Cave Troll is in hand, would be looking for that Siri Dash to hopefully essentially flip the coin, and there it is. That is a big draw for Shaggy already. Having that combination is going to be music to his ears. Of course, no predatory dive to worry about for Shaggy here either. Maybe on ladder he might fear that, but he does, of course, know in an open deck list format that is not going to be the case.
And yeah, Shaggy, I think you're happy with this hand, right? You've got your Siri, so you've got that kind of flex strategy to push into round one. You've got your Cave Troll should you feel that you need it. You've got Maxi to kind of start looking at your hand and think, am I going to draw well? Interestingly, holding the Osril. This is something that kind of causes debate in the Gwent scene of, do you hold Osril or do you mulligan Osril?
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of faction do you fall into?
For me, I would usually mulligan Osril if you've got the luxury. I guess like a big decision, a big part of the decision making is whether or not you have access to a Neuromancy, right? Because if you've got a Neuromancy, it massively increases your odds of knowing that you're going to be able to pull this Osril later. But deciding to keep hold of it. Also, I guess what the other thing that plays into it is if Shaggy's feeling confident this will be a short round, if he feels confident that his hand can secure the round easily, then he doesn't really need to get rid of this Osril. But no defender coming in from Shaggy, just going for the Siri Dash, asking the question of WANGID, do you want to heatwave this? Cannot be locked, of course, because of the Crystal Skull stratagem giving Siri Dash a veil.
Yep, and a Neuromancy in Wang ID's hand does mean he can yeet wave Siri out the window, banish her to the Shadow Realm, never to be seen again, until we next see Shaggy play this list, if he doesn't win. So there is the choice, right? You've got the choice of getting rid of it and just maintaining the card advantage. But if you're using the heatwave there, how do you get through the defender?
Well, that's a really good point. So Shaggy asking the question of Wang, you can heatwave this if you want, but if you do, you might have some troubles later. We mentioned before, of course, there is a movement tech in Wang's deck, but there's no Purify at all. So that is going to be something really interesting to see. At the moment, no answer from Wang ID, just leaving this Siri Dash on the board. And Shaggy has several options. Of course, he's got an E-Gun, which he would like to play earlier, if possible, to make sure it's not going to be destroyed, as well as the Engine Nithral, which can really apply a lot of pressure here. Of course, as well, Wang ID may still decide to heatwave this Siri Dash, so Shaggy could play his Cave Troll if he wants. But Wang ID might also just be hoping that Shaggy sinks some more boost into the Siri Dash, which doesn't seem super likely, but you never know, right? You can always try your luck.
Yeah, just keep boosting it. It can be the only card on the row. I don't know. I think when Shaggy doesn't see the immediate answer, you kind of read that as Wang ID's not going to answer it. So you may as well just kind of leave it. You've given him that opening. Do you really commit Cave Troll here when you can use Cave Troll to protect other cards like your Beast, like your Keltulist? The Cave Troll is really flexible. So in this situation, I guess Shaggy agrees, opting to play the Maxi, look at his draws and decide, am I happy with the state of my deck, or shall we shuffle it and throw something to the bottom?
Yeah, Maxi's such a good card. The only gold card at 5 provisions that is a unit. So she's just going to be very popular in a lot of these neutral decks. She's another one of those payoff and non-devotion decks. Crimson Curse coming in from Wang ID, of course, just gobbling up the opportunity to get some bleeding as early as possible. Crimson Curse needs 5 turns to get its maximum value, and Siri Dash, of course, with that Veil, Maxi being played in the back row just means that Veil's not going to be an issue, because that can block a lot of the bleeds. So I think Wang ID is going to be very happy to see this Maxi down. Just a nice, easy bleeding target.
Yeah, interesting, I guess, decision making with the positioning and stuff. But Ikern now coming down, get that big boy worm on the board, and start to set up your graveyard, right? You're setting up your Osril by doing this. It's a nice big target. And again, it's something that you can be tempted to heatwave because you banish it, right? You don't discard it or kill it, you banish it. And that means that you then can't Osril it. If you kill the Osril, not the Osril, the Ikern, you get rid of 13 points on the go from just slaying the worm. But you also get rid of potential value on the Osril. So again, it's a tempting target. And Wang ID, though, he's in a position where he doesn't have huge amounts of big removal. So you've got to kind of decide, when is the best shot? Like, what is my best shot with this yeet wave? What gets yeeted, basically? And that's a tough decision in this matchup because there's so many different parts that you could potentially want to kill. With that said, he opts for the Endrega, consuming the egg, spawning more little Arrakis bugs. We'll see 8 million Arrakis come out of that Endrega warrior. And that is the miracle of life, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, so WANGID electing not to take this heatwave. And I know a lot of you will be very surprised by that decision. He had access to the Aneromancy. He had the opportunity to heatwave it. And this is probably just a bit of a punish for not including that Purify in his deck. Electing for a movement tech instead. Certainly for this matchup, a Purify would go a long way because it would mean that the heatwave could be used on a target such as Ciri, and then the movement on a Nithral or a Kaltalis. But because this heat wave is the only answer to the defender, WANGID just letting this Ciri dash go. And of course, card advantage in Gwent is one of the most popular, one of the most powerful things you can possibly do.
Yeah. The thing is with this situation, because Shaggy is on blue coin, the Ciri going through is not necessarily as punishing as when you're on red coin. You know, when you're on red coin and you draw another card, you basically just flip the coin flip by doing this. So Shaggy's effectively now playing on red and WANGID on blue. So compared to a situation where you end up with two card advantage, where you're basically guaranteeing card advantage for the final round, this isn't the worst case scenario. So, you know, not all series are created equal. I guess some of them are a bit worse than others.
Yeah, and I think as well, just the whole line, the whole approach that WANGID's taken in this one, he's trying to just get as many points down as soon as possible so that he can hopefully win this round and not lose on even. Because losing on even in Gwent then just means that Shaggy's going to have complete and utter control over how the rest of the game plays out. If he wants a short round, a long round, the cards really will be in his hand. And this is why Ciri Dash is just such a frightening card. Of course, she was nerfed recently to not be able to be given Veil with the leader charge. But if you're going first, you can use that Crystal Skull because Dora Grey was not an option to lock her here. Also, we did see the investment of a leader charge, the first of 3 from Shaggy, boosting this Nithral and giving it Veil. Again, means it can't be locked and also takes it out of Parasite range. So WANGID then just deciding to threaten this again, threaten the removal on the Nithral. And of course, Shaggy does have dominance at the moment, so this Nithral is doing 2 points of damage per turn. Could just be used as 1 point of damage to remove some wands and deny some swarm payoff. And the Parasite used offensively to, again, keep this out of the Parasite range from WANGID here.
Dora Grey is actually going to be super awkward for WANGID to utilize because of the Veil on the Carapace. Like, you're almost saving that for Ciri in some ways if they didn't have the Crystal Skull, because Ciri can't get Veil from leader, whereas monsters cards can. That was the change that was applied to Carapace to kind of adjust this deck a little bit. And so the Dora Grey actually not really going to find, I think, an easy target. You know, you don't want to lock a defender and you can't lock a Veil unit. So what do you lock? It's not so hot.
Yeah, and that's just Shaggy drawing this Ciri Dash in round 1 is just going to prove to be really crucial. A big moment from WANGID with a bit of a surprise Yennefer with the bleeding coming in. That does get him ahead as it stands. The squirrel from Shaggy, though, which the Ciri Dash very kindly put into his hand, is an option to banish this Aneromancy now as well. Really early on.
A little bit awkward in that regard. WANGID, though, we have to think about how he spent this round, and he hasn't really spent much other than, well, the Yennefer now was his most expensive thing. But in terms of golds versus bronzes, I would say that Shaggy has invested a lot more onto the board so far. But then how crucial are his golds? Like, Maxi is not really crucial. Ciri, you want to play in round 1, and Icarn, you want to get in your graveyard. So I guess the only crucial gold is Nithral.
Yeah, and I think also Shaggy just prioritising getting this Nithral down nice and early as well. The longer it's on the board, of course, the more points it's going to get, the longer this round goes on. And WANGID, this Yennefer, really not what you want to be using her for. Barely getting him ahead. He's now committed arguably his best card, and he's still down as well. I think WANGID will be happy he managed to get some decent Crimson Curse value in early, because that can be another one with the Veils, just like Dora Grey. But yeah, looking in a rough spot here at the moment. This Ciri Dash draw for Shaggy looking to be very, very influential on how this one's panning out so far.
Yeah, and that's not what you want to find either. Like, you got your drones, you got 5 points from that Yennefer. You weren't looking for that. You're looking for a bone talisman there. Like, my idea is just it's just been a bit of a sad day for the Arrakis Swarm. I mean, there is a not fat Nithril. Well, there is a fat Nithril. There is a fat Erden. But is this the situation where you want to be playing Erden when cards like the Beast exist and Osril? I don't think so.
Yeah, WANGID offering to go to win this round 2 cards down by not using a couple of leader charges. Shaggy with a squirrel in hand with the Nithral down might be tempted to try and stay on in this round and just get some even more good cards from WANGID and not take this pass just yet. But WANGID is asking the question of Shaggy, do you want to pass, mate? And Shaggy kindly responds, I would prefer to banish your Aneromancy and make your round 2 hand a lot worse, make the consistency of your deck a lot worse, and hopefully you're going to miss some of your important gold cards down the line. And there's not a lot of... Sorry, Jag.
That's okay. I was going to say we do have the Chimera and the Adrenaline available to that now. So WANGID does suddenly have some kind of space to play, especially with the low tempo of the squirrel. Like, he's not a very quick squirrel. He's quite slow, really. And so we see the Chimera coming down now, consuming the Arrakis and then boosting all the other Arrakis and giving him, he's got 4 points ahead, but that's not huge, right? It's big, but it's not huge.
Yeah, and Shaggy is just, with this Nithra on board, it's just putting in so much work, and WANGID just really does not have that swarm payoff that he's looking for. He's already committed the Yen, somewhat prematurely, arguably. And I think, like, on reflection, WANGID, this Yennefer play, was a little bit desperate. He was trying his best to win the round, but it just wasn't enough. And he just didn't have the follow-up. So not only does it look like he's going to be losing this round on even cards, he's also committed, arguably, his most powerful win condition in Yennefer.
I would say that knowing the Gwent community, it is quite common for people to be desperate for Yen, so I'm not really surprised. But Erden does come down now on the resetting that Nithral, resetting that Ciri, and that's the tempo that he kind of needed. He was trying to make himself space that Shaggy couldn't just play one card and get out, right? And suddenly it's 46 points to 35, but you've spent Yennefer. You're basically spending all of the famous cards. We've spent Yennefer, we've spent Geralt, we've spent Triss, like all of the iconic cards. We've seen Ciri. This is the most iconic game of Gwent I think I've ever seen.
And actually, this Uridan, suddenly WANGID showing his points. Dominance still available for Shaggy, so he's got 2 points on this Nithral. Osril, not going to be a card that's going to want to be committed. If the Cave Troll, of course, is committed, that means Keltalis can just get heatwaved. So big decision for Shaggy, and in fact, just takes the natural selection. Will we see double leader charge come in? Or, wow, WANGID manages to get out of the round. Can you believe? After all that, actually, WANGID just showing how it's done. As bad as it can look, your situation, sometimes you've just got to take the risky lines, and no forktail from Shaggy means that he just didn't have the points to really do it. And also, even if WANGID takes this one, Osril and Cave Troll, not really the cards you want to be playing.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you see that play, the natural selection, do you think, well, maybe my opponent has terrible cards and I can afford to play just one more card, and try and win the round? Because Osril wouldn't have been good here, and you really don't want to play Cave Troll. But then I guess you've got that fear of even cards, right? That's the terror, shall we say? And now Shaggy is in a really awkward position. I'm not even sure Osril there's something to consume at this point. With
there's
all the
a Yennefer. I'm not sure if there's anything else. There's certainly a Yennefer, but that would require double leader charge, I do believe. It would just require one leader charge. In fact, Osril will go to 3 points. Nithral would tick for 2 and a leader charge. So that is an option. I think you probably value the Cave Troll more, I would say.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, you've seen Erden. So Osril's decent, and the leader charges are crucial for protecting things like Keltulis, things like the Beast, if you don't want them to get locked.
WANGID's going to be very happy to see that Cave Troll out, for sure. Sort of validating his early decision-making not to heatwave this Ciri. It looked controversial, but on reflection, it's gone pretty well. I think he'll be happy with his decision-making in this round.
And as we can see, not all top decks create equal. When one player draws a bronze, the other one draws a gold. That's kind of what's been going on here. But we'll see how players opt to adjust their hands going into this round and trying to find, I guess, crucial cards for your strategy. Like, what is WANGID looking for here other than the Heatwave, which he's got?
Well, of course, he doesn't have a Neromancy as well, but he does have this Berserker now, which is going to be an answer to Keltalis. Going to be able to move her to the back row and turn her ability off. A bit of Swarm would be nice as well. Shaggy hand has the option to bleed, potentially, with cards like Phantom and Ozreal does have some nice proactivity. Of course, this Forktail as well is going to be a lot of points and just takes this pass. WANGID does have the Maxi, I do believe, for the perfect dry pass card. Having a look at what he can top deck, he may not have a Neuromancy, but he knows what he's going to top deck, and I would imagine this is probably a keep. The Behemoth being
It's probably a keep.
Being a big card for round number 3.
Yeah,
Shaggy.
This is the ideal situation for Maxi. Shaggy going into a longer round, which some people don't like against Raka Swarmlight because they have so much synergy with swarming the board. But I guess when you have Forktails, you're not as scared of them swarming the board. And when you have 2 Forktails, you're even less scared of them swarming the board.
And WANGID did decide to keep his hand, his Maxi, didn't shuffle, so he knows exactly what he will be drawing into. That is, as you mentioned, the perfect time to use Maxi in that round 2, because there's a good chance some of your golds are going to be right at the bottom of your deck, and maybe you've drawn into a gold. So I believe Heatwave was top decked, and then the deck could have been shuffled to maybe put some of those other golds near the top. Double Forktail for Shaggy looks quite intimidating, I must confess.
Yeah, it's a scary one because of how impactful it is on your drones. You leave them out and they can just get slayed. That's the issue. You need to try and kind of boost them up to a point where they can survive the Forktail, and that doesn't always happen.
There was an option for an early Forktail here from Shaggy, instead electing or deciding to go for his Phantom in the front row here, and WANGID with the Parasite can just answer that straight away. There could have been a leader charge from Shaggy there. That was an option. I would be very surprised if we do not see this Behemoth come in, because that's going to put all these drones at 2 strength and keep them out of the range of just being destroyed by a Forktail.
And there we go.
Sorry, of course. There's the Forktail.
Just wait a turn.
Yeah.
I guess, Shaggy knew that WANGID probably has Parasite. We'll test the water, right? We'll test the water. If I play Apian Phantom and he kills it, then I can just slay the bugs. But now WANGID's like, oh, well, you've slayed my bugs. So now I'm going to spawn my full leader charge and play the Behemoth in order to spawn more and protect them. That's the key feature here, right? Is now they're at 2. So the second Forktail can't come in and do, a big bug sweep, be like, this game is terrible, we need to fix all of these bugs and just crush them all. That's not an issue anymore. The bugs have multiplied too much and they interact with each other in strange ways.
Here comes Kelly. I absolutely love this play from Shaggy. He puts the Phantom down on the board, knowing that WANGID wants to Parasite this, but he also wants to get his Behemoth down. He doesn't lead a charge to tempt that Parasite, and then as a result, he can just slam that Forktail next turn, wiping out all those drones. And there we have the Bruiser just turning this Keltalis off. She's not going to be doing anything more this round, but still has a nice 9-point body on the board.
That's a shame for the Bruiser. I think he's quite a handsome fellow. Yeah, that's just my take on the situation. Shaggy, they're playing this beast, and this is quite a late beast in the round. And when your opponent has that much swarm, this is, I think, going to be a relatively close game in the Jagger scale of close games. I'm going to say close. Because what else does Shaggy really have here? Like, yeah, the Forktail is nice. Okay, the Forktail is nice. Ozreal Consume is not bad, but then WANGID has a Heatwave. He's got the Chimera. It's close. I think it's scary.
The fact that Shaggy has this last say as well does mean that he can hold both of these leader charges, which means he's got 6 points that cannot be interacted with, as well as this Ozreal, which is going to be at 14. So lots of points that WANGID is not going to be able to touch. So let's just see if he can muster enough. Certainly not maximizing points because of this Forktail with all these Swarm payoff cards. 3-point game as it stands, Jag.
And there's 2 leader charges, bear that in mind. So Heatwave playing for 9, whereas Ozreal plus leader charges means I do believe that Shaggy has it in, I want to say close. If it's less than 5 points, 5 points or less, it's close. It's close!
It was close.
The game. The outcome. It was a close game.
We have
Nilfgaard.
WANGID.
Nilfgaard versus Lime Pockets.
Yeah, so WANGID also has these locks in his deck. The main meta deck, the one that Shaggy's also got, has these Slave Hunters, the Assimilate engines in at 5 provisions. But these locks from WANGID could be very, very influential on this. Being able to lock Spenders, being able to lock a card like Saul and also the Tunnel Drill, maybe can just force Shaggy to go more tall with his spenders, and therefore WANGID getting more value out of his poisons and things like that.
Yep, you can lock whatever Philippa steals from you. There's loads of targets out there for you to lock. So WANGID running double cross on blue, Shaggy on red with lined pockets. Looking at the round 1 hands, how are you feeling?
I mean, if we're looking at Shaggy, obviously what you really want to see is an abundance of crime cards, at least 1 spender, probably 2 against a deck that has locks, and safe crackers as well as access to justice. And Shaggy has all those things. Okay, his hand could be more crime heavy. A 5-point safe cracker, not what you want to be seeing, I must admit, but it's going to get poisoned anyway, so maybe it's not the end of the world. And I think having both 2 spenders is also going to be another thing that can play around the poisons. 5-point safe cracker. You don't see that very often, I must admit.
He's a halfling. Like, they're just small by nature, okay? It's not his fault. It's just the genetics. He's a little halfling. But the poison there, it's not the worst thing. It sets up a status for your doggos, so you can go find your doggos. But Kurt, man of the match, decides to purify the halfling. He's like, it's okay, small friend. I got you. He is friend of the halflings.
Yeah, it's great to see Kurt in action. I really do love a bit of Kurt action. Having the option to give bounty as well for extra coins of Tunnel Drill and things like that. But here being used as a purifier. Shaggy's going to be so upset about this 5-point halfling. It's pretty unbelievable, honestly. I looked at his hand, I was like, this is good. And then I see the size of the safecracker and I realise it is not good. It is not good at all.
Not good.
Shaggy does have 1 poison in hand, could a Neuromancy for his second, or also Furco for it. You would expect Furco is going to be used for justice, but with the fact that there's a poison there, maybe it could...
Nah, he's playing Furco now. If you're Furcoing for poison, you play the first poison, right? You don't Furco the first poison. You play 1 and see what your opponent does before you make a decision. Also, Furcoing like this with justice, it allows you to thin your deck a little bit. Get an even smaller safecracker. Is he even smaller? Is he the same? No, I think he might be the same. We'll see. Yeah, he's the same. Just a little small boy living his best life.
And really this matchup, it's dictated by Masquerade Ball most of the time. Both players are going to want to win round 1. WANGID would probably fancy himself in a long round, particularly with Larcey, whereas Shaggy is probably going to feel inclined to try and bleed out this Masquerade Ball from WANGID. So both players really going to want to try and fight to win round 1. They're not going to want to overcommit and spend too many gold cards to do it. They're going to want to try and win round 1 as cheaply as they possibly can.
Yep, so we've got Shaggy threatening the poison, WANGID with the cupbearer making his delicious soup. I'm going to assume it's soup. What else do you make in a pot? But, he had the option of purifying there or saying, you know what, fine, if you want to win this round, win this round. I've played some bronzes. I've thinned my deck. I'm actually okay with what I've gotten out of you, because he did get quite a bit out of Shaggy. And WANGID just said, go on, you can have control. We'll see where we go from here.
Yeah, WANGID anticipating a bleed from Shaggy and saying, okay, look, if you can bleed me, I'm just going to keep all my cards. I don't want to use this Purify. I know you've only got 1 poison left in your deck. So if I decide not to Purify this, it means I can save my Cupbearer, who's such a important card with the Assimilate engine as well. Really interesting pass. And really now, just WANGID saying to Shaggy, okay, what are you going to do now? Like, are you going to really commit to this round? How hard are you going to try and bleed me? No Masquerade Ball in hand either for WANGID. That could be a good thing because it means the ball cannot be bled out of him, but it also could be a bad thing because maybe the opportunity arises for Shaggy to sense that WANGID doesn't have the best hand.
Exactly. On the one hand, your ball cannot be bled. On the other hand, you do not have your ball in hand. So, decide which is the worst case scenario. So Shaggy opening up with Cleaver, getting the Intimidate engine on the board and just starting to set up some Crown Splitter pockets. Lined pockets, Crown Splitter pockets. This deck is just full of pockets.
Yeah, and also Shaggy here spending twice with his Cleaver, being able to do that because he did carry over 4 coins. And here comes the first lock, and the fact that Shaggy has clicked twice on this Cleaver means that he does have a Crown Splitter sandwich available to him for his Tunnel Drill to just slot nicely in there and do 3 points of damage for 2 coins spent, which is not only can be fantastic for shutting down engines, but it's also one of the most efficient ways of spending coins.
And WANGID Nilfgaard is one of those lists that can disrupt your pockets, right? Like,
True.
although you may think all of the crime lies in Shaggy's hand, it turns out that WANGID very good at cutting pockets, splitting pockets. You slot your little spies into those pockets. You're like, right, you know how you wanted to put a drill in your pocket? Well, I've put this small emissary in there instead and ruined your day. That's more or less what it does. So that is something that Shaggy has to be aware of. He has to kind of find his opportunity to utilize the pockets and utilize the spend from Tunnel Drill without, oh, look, here comes Joaquin. You got a man and a horse in your pocket now. So, you know, tough luck.
Yeah, this is also like normally when you're a syndicate player doing these bleeds, you will see Sir Skewertooth being the first card that comes down because then you have those immune points. Of course, Shaggy maybe in this matchup would prefer Skewertooth, but deciding overall Saul is his pick. Will we see Saul entering the field soon? Usually this Tunnel Drill as well, Shaggy's going to want to get up to the maximum amount of coins before this Tunnel Drill enters the board, but doesn't have an abundance of ways of gaining coins in his hand. Very little profit. And also, this second Crown Splitter pocket between Cleaver and the Cleaver's Muscle could easily be disrupted soon. So it could be time for Tunnel Drill, potentially. Be very interesting to see what Shaggy does.
It's a really awkward bleed for Shaggy because WANGID kind of has all the answers. Like, you play Soul, then Soul just gets poisoned, right? You don't really have a good setup for your Tunnel Drill, like you said. So you just make hay while the sun shines and take the Tunnel Drill now. Jam the damage, but then now you don't have coins for Soul. So you kind of hurt yourself. But on the flip side, the bleed is much more safe now. 27 points to 5. That is a much safer position for a bleed.
Yeah, a bit of a grimace on the face with Shaggy, I would imagine, when he plays this Tunnel Drill. Okay, great answers an engine, but having to invest the leader charges and not being able to spend as many coins as he would potentially like. However, 22 points is a lot of points. Of course it is.
That is 22 whole points. That is a lot by some sort of definition. It looks like Brathens is coming to the party now. Get that Assimilate on the board. Pop down your Emissary. Disrupt some more pockets. Boost up some targets. But you're leaving the Tunnel Drill. And then the double cross onto the Aneromancy.
Finds it.
That's... Ooh. And he gets it the next turn. That's just like the dream. That is the dream.
It's gonna
look at a talented fellow. It's
going to proc the Assimilate as well on Brathens. It's going to give him access to at next round, as you mentioned. And Shaggy probably would have been playing this Aneromancy next turn to try and deny this. WANGID sensing danger. He doesn't get ahead, though. Does offer Shaggy the pass.
But that is a thoroughly closed gap, though.
Not sure if you're Shaggy, you would fancy going into round 3 against a Masquerade Ball, a Usurper, a Vigo, and all the poisons, Cantarella, etc.
What do? You need to make some space here, right? You've got 4 points of lead.
It's a really tough one.
So you need to kind of do something big. But what is your big play here?
Just doesn't have much
Soul's
coin
not
flow.
Great.
Yeah.
Harold's trash. Sea Jackal's trash. Philippa doesn't have a target, so you have to go Neuromancy. So what are you Neuromancying? Jux?
The Swindle coming in, which is going to guarantee, I believe, 8 coins of profit, 3 safecrackers on the board. Doesn't spend, gets the ship out. A very low tempo player there, this Swindle. Not even proccing Intimidate at all.
Also, that WANGID does have Coup in hand with Wakim on the board, so he can. Well, there he goes. He does opt to get another Wakim on the board, find an armored cavalry, get that lock. You've got the Tunnel Drill you can always lock there to just deny the spend. And now get ahead. So now the bleed is bled. Shaggy, unlikely, I think, to get his card back. But sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's worth losing a card to shorten the round.
Yep, and his spender has been locked. He does have access to 2 more. Philippa is bricked at the moment. She would just be a 3-point card, but the Sea Jackal, of course, being another spender. Saul finally enters the party. Has to be said, Sir Skewertooth would have done a lot more in this round 2 bleed for Shaggy. Just being able to lead in with that. He would have had an Intimidate card on the board. Would have gained a lot of points. Saul, of course, the best poison target, and also just not offering that pass either by going for the Cupbearer instead of the Fangs.
Yeah, the Cupbearer is just annoying there, that 1 extra point, allowing that. You can then spend on your Sea Jackal to try and kind of stay ahead if you need to. And that's what Shaggy decides now. You've got to decide, how much am I spending on this Jackal? You know, where am I going with this? Do I just do a little spend? Opting for the little spend. Now, WANGID does have the follow-up poison. available, but he can kind of take that when he likes. The thing is, if he wants to pressure Shaggy and stay ahead and try and gain a card, this is a good time to play it. You know, you could have played slow there because you can always catch up with one card, but if he wants to gain a card and really put pressure on Shaggy, he's just kind of keeping that point gap big enough that if he needs to play slow, he can.
Yeah, Philippa is an option now on the Cupbearer or the Fangs. If Philippa is used on the Cupbearer, that would fill up the front row, which means Usurper wouldn't play for as many points. But with a Mentor available as well off the location, it's just looking very awkward here for Shaggy indeed. Philippa does come in.
It's not even a great Philippa is the thing. Because of the point gap being 8 points, you know, if you look at the difference now, it's 51 to 43, so it's 8 points the other way. But is that enough? Like, I feel like WANGID can make 8 points if he needs to in one card.
Yep, Usurper is going to be 9 points. Also, WANGID will have a lot of information about the cards that are remaining in the deck. Of course, realizes there's a 12-point card in the deck, which is Jack, and that Mentor is going to be more than enough, even proccing the Assimilate off Brathens, and setting up a potential Cantarella for round 3, because, of course, it does have Resilience this location. The order is going to be able to be clicked in the next round, and WANGID can put a Joachim on top of Shaggy's deck and then Cantarella it back out for extra Joachims, which, of course, is an Aristocrat can proc ball. And let's not forget, WANGID has that Aneromancy as well coming on top of his deck for the next round too.
Yep, and the Coup de Grace. So he's got Aneromancy, Coup de Grace, and one other card, right? If you're Shaggy, you've got a 10-point play here. So you're going to put yourself ahead by, 5? And then you've got to hope your opponent can't play 6 points? Like, nah. I don't see it. So you've lost your card. So your question is do you think your Herald is worth more or less than what they can play? And he's saying, I think this Herald is worth less. He's worthless. No, I think he's worth less than whatever WANGID plays to catch up. That's that decision there. You know that your opponent can catch up. Your question is, how is he going to catch up? What is he going to play? And is my card worth more than their card? And he thinks his card is not worth more, so you play it.
I'm just trying to work out if there's a possibility that Vigo could not be enough. Of course, it's going to proc Assimilate off Brathens and Vigo, but maybe if he hits 3 1s, it could be close. I've not done the maths. WANGID saying, there's no danger. All my options are going to be enough, so I'm just going to play it. Of course, could have just committed the Usurper because he's just winning in this position. He has Masquerade Ball, he has card advantage. Shaggy has no carryover from his coins. 1 leader charge available to Shaggy.
I mean, you keep Usurper because he's an Aristocrat, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you do it. You just says Coup de Grace. There's the Aneromancy that he stole. That is theft. And then Roderick. Oof.
Quite the hand. It is quite the hand.
I feel like at this point, WANGID could be a hand model. That's how nice that hand is. Like, show me watches, show me rings. Just put out your hand and let me look at it. I'll buy whatever you're selling at that point.
WANGID does have first say and last say as well in this matchup. So you would expect Masquerade Ball seems like a good card to lead with here. Shaggy doesn't really have any opportunity to win this. Maybe his win con here was that WANGID would not find his Masquerade Ball in round 3. But of course, with the Aneromancy steal, that is not going to be any issues whatsoever.
Yeah, like this is just like, you're just waiting. It's like that meme, like, you know, Starpy's already dead. Like, I feel like Shaggy just doesn't necessarily realize it. You know, it's a difficult situation for Shaggy, and especially with Coup de Grace on Roderick plus Aneromancy. Like, WANGID can basically find whatever he needs. All of his gold cards are accessible at this point, plus Masquerade Ball, and that's finally coming out to play now. So there's the Masquerade Ball plus the Thirsty Dame, and yeah, Shaggy's like, okay, fine, I quit.
Yeah, and this is like a part of the reason why this Masquerade Ball deck has been so popular and achieving so well on the ladder. It is favoured in this matchup.
You pick your cue, right? You can either play, these decks are good on this coin, or you think, oh, my opponent's going to play this, I'll play this. But you can kind of mind game yourself, so you need to be a bit careful. But as it is, Shaggy did put Nilfgaard. Jagras is a psychic. The crowd goes wild. Yeah, Jagras. He's on blue versus Skellige for WANGID on red.
Yeah, of course, Blaze of Glory and Masquerade Ball both have these massive cards. Nilfgaard has Masquerade Ball, and Blaze of Glory has this iced combo. So going to be really interesting to see. I must admit, not a matchup I've much experience with, as these are two decks that aren't something I play very often. But certainly looking forward to see how this one pans out. Of course, Skellige has a lot of tool cards, whereas Nilfgaard has quite a lot of engines. And it'll be very interesting to see the Protector, big card in round 1 for WANGID here for 4 provisions, can get a lot of points. And
it can be a little bit awkward for Skellige. There's a lot of nice poison targets in WANGID's list, right? Like there's lots of things that you're quite happy poisoning that he has to play early. On top of that, Skellige does well at doing like little bits of damage and kind of putting them together to remove things, but there's not a huge amount of removal targets in Nilfgaard necessarily, and the ones that they are can get protected, so it can become a little bit awkward for the Skellige player to see the true value of their cards, right? Because a lot of the time their value is in the removal, it's in the small amounts of damage, it's in their engines, and Shaggy has ways of dealing with those, or just taking them for himself.
Yeah, and again, just to touch on the difference between the WANGID deck, in case you're just joining us, this Nilfgaard deck exactly the same as Shaggy's that we just saw. However, this Shaggy deck that he's playing, the Nilfgaard deck, exactly the same as WANGID's that we just saw him win with, but these slave hunters instead of the locks. And this gave him a really nice proactive option that's got the floating damage as well as an assimilate engine. It can set up some nice coup de grace and things like that. So already, like, he really was struggling for proactivity without this slave hunter. So you can see the advantage of sort of the lock against Syndicate and the assimilate engine against Skellige. So both players, this deck building decision really being made based on what they were banning and have been banning for the whole tournament.
Yeah, the thing with the switch there is if you had locks are still nice against Skellige, right? There's enough targets that if you have locks, they're nice, but the proactivity is sometimes a bit of a problem, especially on blue coin when you're going first in round 1. Playing slave hunters is good because you can also protect them in the way that Shaggy did. In regards to the leader tier list, I like this. I basically judge people based on the leaders that they pick. I think WANGID with Yennefer is currently winning, and I have no idea why Shaggy picked this Nilfgaard leader. Like, of all the Nilfgaard leaders, why this one?
I think it's Morven, right? I'm actually a bit of a Morven fan, I must admit.
Ooh,
a lesser known fact, I actually had a Twitch account before this one for like a week that was called Prepare for War. I changed it after Morven.
No, we want less Vran. We don't want more Vran. Like, of all the Nilfgaard leaders you could pick, Usurper, better. Emir, better. Anna Henrietta, better. Okay, I mean, there's some other trash ones too, but they're all kind of equally trash. But still, I don't know. I'm not a fan, Shaggy. I'm not a fan. So Heatwave Protector being set up there on the board next to the Brockvar, basically saying if you're going to damage my Brockvar Hunter, then at least I'll gain from it. But with that said, Shaggy can just damage the Protector instead.
Yeah, also Bribery Player in the chat pointed out the fact that there's actually a bit of hidden synergy with this Hunter that Shaggy has copied and the Hunting Pack in hand, because the Hunting Pack is a beast which will improve the timer on this Hunter by 1. So that's a pretty cool bit of hidden synergy there. Not something you see every day. That's what Nilfgaard does.
Beasts. Hey, look, let's get another. You know what? I feel like Shaggy was like, oh yeah, that is a beast. I'll get another Hunter. Let's do it. Let's coup de grace. Let's kill the Hunter. Like, sure, we boost up the Protector by 1, but now those doggos, that's true value right there. But you need, I was going to say you need a status, but he's got spies.
Yeah. And it's often quite nice to have these Hunters on the same timer, so you can do 2 damage at the same time rather than 1 damage one turn, 1 damage the next turn, as that just can give you that little extra bit of removal that you might need. Also, the spies can disrupt this Heatwave Protector pocket. Heatwave Protector can just be worth a ridiculous amount of points, but of course, these Nilfgaard spies, just like against Syndicate, they can disrupt these sorts of things.
And I think WANGID did well to get the value out of the Protector that he did get. Putting it next to the Hunter, thinking you're going to kill my Hunter, so I'm going to get value there. Then playing his boat and instantly using the charge to get value from the Protector there as well, knowing that there is disruption coming. And bear in mind, Shaggy's played, 3 spies this round? Like, he has played a lot of spies. There's a lot of already played, so you might think, oh, maybe the Protector won't get disrupted, but it's Nilfgaard. Like, they always got more spies.
Yeah, and again, I think this matchup, if I'm WANGID again, it's not one I'm massively experienced in, but if you can avoid giving Masquerade Ball a long round 3 with Last Say, you really, I would imagine, would like to do so, because it's just such an intimidating deck to go up against. with all the assimilate engines as well, and the potential that Nilfgaard could clog your side of the board in a long round as well, means it's just really not something you would ideally go into a long round against. And here the hunter pings come into fruition. Having this 2 hunter pings at the same time means that the card can be removed, which is very ideal for Shaggy. And the hunting pack synergy, will we see it, Jag? I want to see it.
Nah, WANGID's going to pass. I really like the way that WANGID played his hunter there, though, resurrecting it with the War of Clans, then placing it next to the hunter, using the charge on his own unit on the spy, killing it, which boosts up the protector and re-enables the pocket. Like, the pocket has been fixed, the hole in the pocket has been stitched, and it was a nice little play. But Gutting Slash coming out now, and you want the doggos, right? Come on, let's give the people what they want, Shaggy.
Yeah, we want to see it.
We want some doggos, please.
Of course, the follow-up poison is available for Shaggy as well, but this Cupbearer, more than just a poison, has the assimilate tag as well. So Shaggy, if he would ideally like to hold on to it, you would anticipate that WANGID is going to force it out of him anyway. But Shaggy can just, bait, maybe play some mind games and say to WANGID, maybe I don't have this poison. And WANGID just sort of has to assume that he doesn't and hope that he doesn't.
There's no way you think maybe he doesn't have this poison after he used his charges to sink the boat next to the protector.
You never know, right?
You don't believe that hard. Like, I am all for believing. Like, I'm that player that's like, I just believe they don't have this card. But against Nilfgaard with multiple poisons, I mean, the proof is in the pudding that Van Morlehem Cupbearer just fed to that poor protector and poisoned him to death. Murder pudding. The proof is in the murder pudding.
26-point gap. Blood Eagle was available as well, but just not going to have the points there. And Shaggy does take this round. The poisons being very, very good for him, as well as copying these hunters. Just had a lot of control in this round 1. And that's the beauty of poisons. Having these cheap tool punishes is something that Nilfgaard and Syndicate both have a lot of joy in including. A lot of other decks having to invest a lot of provisions for these cards that punish the tool units.
So both players currently succeeding in playing Gwent, the Draw Your Golds card game. We'll see. Yep, see? Very talented individuals here. WANGID and Shaggy. WANGID using his mulligans, drawing golds. Shaggy not even needing his mulligans. That's how good he is at drawing cards. Snapping that pass and saying to WANGID, what do you play here? He just plays his Bear Witcher. His 1 bronze card. And we'll get into round 3 and see what happens.
He didn't think much about that, Shaggy, and that's because this was his game plan the whole time. He wanted that round control. He wanted to dry pass, and he wanted to have Masquerade Ball in a reasonably long round 3 with last say. It'll be interesting to see as well. Sometimes you can cycle Ball right at the end if you mulligan Roderick and you have the right amount of gold cards. It'll be really interesting to see and pay attention to his mulligans. I think it's something that when I play Masquerade Ball decks, I think I could improve on as well. So let's just have a look to see what Shaggy is going to mulligan. You would imagine with quite a few bronze cards, it'll probably just be the bronze cards and it won't be too interesting. But certainly the option, a lot of big decisions you can sometimes make in your mulligans. But the Joachim is found, which Shaggy is going to be very, very happy to see as well.
Now, it is worth noting, I just, speaking is difficult. It is worth noting that Double Cross is an absolute pain in the arse for Skellige, because Skellige has so many cards that are just good. Like, they're just good cards. Like, Skjordal is just good. Morkvarg, if you have a target, is good. Harold, because he's got, what's it called in the graveyard? Warriors in the graveyard, is amazing. Like, Shaggy can kind of play WANGID's cards in the way that they're meant to be played, but for Nilfgaard. So this is a matchup where Double Cross can be incredibly painful. We saw Double Cross in the last game for WANGID, high roll onto Neuromancy, so we'll have to see what Shaggy gets from it. But WANGID opting for Kadok, Bear Witcher Quartermaster, setting up the board, little proactive play, and waiting to see what it is Shaggy does. And proactivity also something that sometimes Skellige can lack.
Yeah, this is just another advantage that the Nilfgaardians have here, is forcing Skellige to go first. Using a Kadooch for a Quartermaster, most likely not what WANGID would be doing if he had the choice, but having very little options here. Raiding Fleet now an option. Of course, you can't play Raiding Fleet proactively as you do need a target to use it, but that would put a ship on the board. Not looking like the strongest of gold hands. Harold not in the hand either, so setting up Bloodthirst or a 2-strength card for Blood Eagle is going to be necessary to get that Harold out as soon as possible.
But you want Harold in the hand, right? Because if you have Harold in the hand,
That's a good
then
point.
you play into double cross.
Yep.
It's one of those. It's one of those catch-22s, right? You want to have your cards in hand that are good, but you also don't want to have your cards that are good so that they don't steal them from you. Bloody Nilfgaard, man! No wonder everyone hates us.
We've also got this damage from Shaggy on the board, the floating damage, if you will, which is threatening to set up a coup de grace on any 5-strength card or less. This raider could be used in combination with coup to get that card and play it. Of course, the other option is using it on a card like Joachim. What a card coup is. Just an absolute powerhouse. Of course, cards like Brathens and Cupbearer and Vigo with the Assimilate engines, as well as Masquerade Ball, the location proccing this Assimilate, and the leader as well, is just part of the driving forces why this is the Masquerade Ball deck of choice for many players.
Yeah, look at that hand now. Look at Shaggy. I mean, they both got full gold hands, but like that Nilfgaard hand is just so scary. Like, why are all these players so talented at drawing cards? Like hand models everywhere. I don't even know what's going on. So Shaggy, he's got his Masquerade Ball, he's got Roderick, he's got Joachim, he's got Coup de Grace. He's lots of different ways of triggering it. He has his location, so potentially can do things with Cantarella, should he wish. And he's got Invocation that he can also do things with the Joachim, right? Like Shaggy is just going to be playing WANGID's cards as much as he kind of likes at this stage.
Yeah, here comes Jengi, actually locking the Quartermaster, not respecting the Assimilate value of Brathens, as it could play into a Morkvarg or a Tool Punish. Instead, just locking a card, which is just playing for value. And I believe this is the leader that's just been used here, not what you're most likely looking to see if you are WANGID.
Nah, like the Scriddle's okay, it plays for 6, right? But then I guess like Morkvarg plays for 6. It's the raiding fleet is awkward because you've not got boats. You haven't stolen his boats and put them in your deck. I think if you're there, you're hoping for things like maybe like the Harold. But if you haven't seen Harold at this stage, are you likely to see it? And yeah, a bit of an underwhelming double cross.
Yeah, I don't think the leader was going to be doing much for Shaggy there. Whatever happened, as you say, Harold probably the card that he was looking for. Didn't happen, but all these cards not really great. Apart from maybe and Morkvarg, of course, later on in the round is not going to be doing anything against Skelliger as well.
No, you wanted to find like a Jenga, but it got played. You wanted to find like maybe a Harold, for example. If they happen to have Yuta for some reason, that would have been okay. There's a lot of good bronzes as well. You know, even something like a boat or a hunter. Well, we've seen all the hunters, but there was a lot of decent stuff, and WANGID, I guess, managing to manipulate the hand in such a way that actually a really sad double cross there.
This is the Vigo options, of course. These cards will be set to 1 strength, and the Informant at just 1 strength doesn't really get punished by that. Not wanting the extra poison.
Oof, wish you got punished by that.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, no, she's not punished in the way that you meant it, though. Just she's like, pick this guy, and then he just stabs her in the face. Like, geez, not cool. Okay, so raiding fleet coming down now. We've got some bleeding going on. Here's the boat we were just talking about. Popping that down on the board next to Kadak so that you can heal it should you wish. The Joachim next to Kadak also quite nice for WANGID, because if Shaggy opts to coup that, then you can also heal the horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shaggy has Usurper and Cantarella as the 2 gold cards remaining. Of course, this Joachim can only pull, it can't pull spies, so it's going to only pull units. Finds a Fangs, which I don't think is the most ideal of cards, seeing as there's no follow-up poison for that. I don't believe there's any Fangs left in the deck. There could be off Joachim, I'm not 100% certain on that, but look at the point gap, Jaguars. This is why you want to avoid Masquerade Ball in a long round. So if you queue into Masquerade Ball and Ladder, try your best to win round 1. Don't overdo it, and then try and bleed in round 2 and get rid of that Masquerade Ball, because otherwise, even if you're playing Iced, there can be point gaps like this which just seem absolutely impossible to catch up. But Skelliger is not to be underestimated. Iced is very, very powerful indeed.
Yeah, so Masquerade Ball has since been resolved. There's Invocation still for Shaggy, so he can look to put something on the top of his deck. He can then maybe opt to try and find it again with Roderick, so he does have access to anything that Shaggy plays, which is quite scary. And Harold finally making his way to the party. Better late than never. He's brought a gift for the host, some dude's head. Just a wee gift for whoever's here. Caddick gets triggered. Protector getting boosted up, but still 29 points to 53. That's a big gap.
Yeah, Morkvarg and Ice, the cards remaining. Of course, Ice is going to draw a card as well, hoping to avoid any specials because the Bloodthirst is activated, so the card that is discarded will be summoned to the board, which, of course, if it's a special card, isn't going to do anything at all. Shaggy, on the other hand, has Mentor now available. WANGID just making sure that Harold is out of his deck before that can come in. And we do see the Roderick played here.
I think if you're Shaggy, you know what WANGID has, right? You've seen the Morkvarg, and it's a nice deck. So there's no situation where you wouldn't be like, hey, he's probably got Morkvarg and Ice. So knowing that, you can kind of strategize your hand exactly how you want to. You can say, I want to keep my invocation for, say, the 10 strength greatsword that's probably going to come down. I'm maybe going to just use my location for the card that it plays. I'm not really that bothered about Cantarella anymore and that strategy because my ID probably doesn't have anything good in his deck for me to find. So in that situation, yeah, I think this is a valid strategy. And is that the draw that you want?
Seems pretty good. You are going to get that order as well. It's not going to come in. It does come in straight away, in fact, due to the Bloodthirst. So eight extra points off Ice there compared to hitting like a Blood Eagle or a Gutting Slash or something like that. And suddenly the game is a lot closer than it appeared just a few turns ago. In fact, WANGID is ahead.
Yeah, WANGID's ahead. He's got Morkvarg, who's going to shoot 8 million holes in Artorias Vigo and his little pig friends. That's my prediction. But then you've got the invocation on the 12-point Utah. And then you've got the location. So there is a card differential here, right? But WANGID does still have some points on his radar as well. And the bleed? How close? What do we say? Is it going to be close? Do we say close?
Well, I'm not sure what the highest provision card that is left in WANGID's deck. I'm not sure how many points this Mentor is going to play for. Skellige just out of nowhere putting points onto the board, and Shaggy goes for the Mentor. It's not enough. 10 provisions was missed. And somehow Skellige pulls this off out of nowhere. I didn't see it coming. I've got to be honest.
WANGID opting to bring Arrakis Woman, that's all he's got left. And Shaggy Nuts, the Nutcracker, is his player tag. I just realized that. And he's got a squirrel. He is playing Blind Pocket.
And let's not forget, not many players would fancy their chances against Line Pocket. WANGID, however, he has been playing against Line Pocket all weekend long, and it has not stopped him winning a single series. He has brought the decks he thinks can do well against Line Pockets. This Arrakis Swarm, okay, look, Shaggy has a Tunnel Drill, but Tunnel Drill can only be used in one round, and it's not really that efficient compared to like a Hunter, for example, in Skellige, which is a 4 provision card, can remove a drone. This Tunnel Drill, you're having to spend 2 coins to remove a single drone. Even if they're at 3 strength, there's going to be more Swarm for WANGID. And in WANGID's Syndicate deck, we didn't get to see, he had Horson Jr. To hopefully, have another way of dealing with Swarm, but Shaggy, of course, doesn't have that. So going to be really interested to see how this one pans out. WANGID going first. Does have some proactive options with this Indrega or the Monster's Nest as well.
I'm no financial advisor, but I don't think that's a good investment. However you put it for something. It's like investing in GME. You just don't do it. Or do it. I'm not your mom. Okay, so WANGID, he's got his Endregas on the board. He's just going to leave in them. And that's an annoying card because you don't want to kill it, right? If you're Shaggy, you don't want to poison that. Shaggy, though, he does have a big halfling this time. I've seen that Safecracker, not so small.
I've seen bigger, but it's not a 5 strength one. So that is something. That is certainly something going Shaggy's way. And the Crimson Curse coming in. What a card Crimson Curse is, by the way. 15 points in total, but as an organic card, it actually is a 16-point card because you get this extra drone for just 10 provisions. The sooner WANGID uses it as well, just sort of guarantees that it's going to get that value because it does take a long time to get it. What a card. Really is a good one.
It looks pretty too. From a visual perspective, who doesn't like red moons? I suppose most people. Okay, so Swindle now being opted for Shaggy, trying to start to make some money, trigger the Intimidate, and start to get towards that 9 coins that you need to thin your Flying Redanian. That's something that you want to do in round 1. But WANGID is just like, he's swarming the board. He's playing Arrakis Swarm. He's eating things. He's spawning monsters. The bugs are procreating. The Ekamaras are apparently also procreating because of Crimson Curse. And Shaggy's playing crimes. Like, they're both doing what they're meant to do.
Shaggy actually over profiting by 1 coin here as well, as of course his passive leader ability gains him an extra coin on every crime. So wasting a coin, but of course no Sea Jackal in his hand is far from ideal. It's one of the cards you just want a handful of crimes and a single Sea Jackal often, but Shaggy just doesn't have that luxury. So kind of in a bad spot here. Shaggy in this round 1 hand, he would probably like to contest this a lot more, but with a lack of spending options, it's going to be a real struggle for him.
And opting to jam the Soul. Soul, a victim to Erden a lot of the time. So kind of maybe getting out in round 1 and trying to play it around. Potentially WANGID opting to use his Erden. WANGID maybe opting to save the Erden for something else. Not really sure what, but you know, it's an option. And Shaggy, you're saying he doesn't have a spender, so he's just got to make profit in any way he can. And Soul would have been a good way to do that if Dorgray didn't come out and lock him up.
Yeah, really in this round 1, what you're trying to do as Syndicate, if you're going second, is just use that bank that you mentioned, get to that 9 coins, and just then threaten to take it with a Sea Jackal at all times. You can do it very cheaply. However, Shaggy here wants to spend some coins, but in order to do so, he would then have to commit a massive gold card like Philippa or Cleaver, which is not something he's going to be looking to do. However, Philippa, she's never going to really get much better than she would right now, but does Shaggy have the follow-up? If he takes this Philippa, he will want to try and win the round, or at least get a lot of juice. Takes the heatwave, still threatening that Sea Jackal play, of course. Just saying, look, I've got a Sea Jackal on my hand, I'm just going to click it. WANGID doesn't know that he doesn't, of course. But could still take
heatwave,
it. Like Philippa.
Heatwave on an 8 like that, not really. It's not the target you want, you know? It's not. I guess you have to pick a tall target, and that was the one that you want. The Crimson Curse has ended. The Safecracker so far managing to survive, but we'll see whether that sticks, as he is slowly bleeding to death. Chimera been played for decent value there on adrenaline. So you've got your adrenaline curve now. You can play the Chimera. 34 points to 11. Like, I don't see how Shaggy overcomes this. I think he can pretend with his coins, right? You can always be like, I've got coins in the bank.
Yep.
I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. But is he actually going to get him? I don't think so.
And does take the pass. This is somewhere where, as you mentioned, like bluffing can be a real part of the game at this high level. Shaggy, we could have seen like a risky decision, but he just doesn't have any good plays. This Fistek and this Swindle are just 0-point cards here. They don't do anything. They don't gain him coins because the bank's full, and they don't put any points on the board either. And not wanting to commit this Cleaver, this Shack, or the Philippa. Very awkward opening hand there for Shaggy. And WANGID getting out of that round very cheaply. No big swarm payoff cards invested.
Safecracker being banished back to the deck, so no safe cracking going to be going on at this stage in the game. There's the Sea Jackal that I think Shaggy may have wanted in round 1. Meanwhile, Heatwave in hand for WANGID. Is there a good Heatwave target now that Soul's gone?
There's not normally some stuff that still goes tall, like Jackals and also Jack. And also, if you take a Heatwave on Cleaver, it maybe forces them to go more tall with their other cards. Also, you might just need to Heatwave that Tunnel Drill, even though it doesn't play for much tempo. It is a card you certainly need to respect. And I do believe Dorgray was used on the Soul last round, as that is the other option. Somebody's asked in the chat, don't you think you guys think Skewer Tooth would be better than Soul in Shaggy's deck? I personally would. I think a lot of people do. But we have seen also Red Rain, I believe last month, had success with Soul.
It depends, right? It's one of those cards where it kind of depends a little bit. Like, if you can get Soul to do his thing, then he's nice. He gives you an out for when you don't have spenders that you can still generate profit. And a lot of the time you are going to 9 coins for your Flying Redanian. Skewer Tooth, on the other hand, he's quite flexible. You can make him immune, which is super annoying for some decks. Like, you can argue either way, I suppose. With that said, WANGID, with this not banning Syndicate strategy, seeming to pay off. Shaggy opening up with Cleaver. He's got Intimidate. He's got Shakedown. He can spawn little friends. That's something he sometimes does. Here they come.
I mean, you just really have to respect sort of WANGID taking this risk of, I believe, a second month in a row. As I say, last month, he caught me by surprise when he left. He didn't ban my Syndicate. And just showing confidence. Of course, he's been doing this for a long time. He knows how he can beat this Syndicate deck. He's confident he can do it. And banning Skelliger every single matchup this tournament is certainly not something many players would have been anticipating. So I really love to see these sort of risky decisions being made before the tournament even starts.
Looking at WANGID's list, though, no Yennefer in hand. I mean, we talked about people being desperate for Yen. He is the leader ability, but no Yennefer in hand is pretty nasty. Does have a blood talisman, so does have boost that way. Has Triss, if you're team Triss. I guess that's good if you're desperate for Triss. I ain't, but it's there. You can hopefully find blood bone talisman, but against Syndicate, it's super awkward because of all the crimes diluting the ability of Triss, which is why Yennefer is objectively better.
Wait, did you say Triss is objectively better or Yennefer?
No, I said Yennefer is
good. Okay, sorry.
Better.
I was gonna have to end the call.
That's the end of the stream. We're
WANGID is Team Shani here as well, which I can respect.
Yeah, I know. I was just judging him silently. Anyone who's Team Shani, just they're like yellow team in Pokemon Go. We don't talk about them. So players opting to see who can spawn the most of the same unit with Shaggy and his dwarfs versus WANGID and his Arrakis. I think WANGID might win in that regard.
But yeah, like as you mentioned, missing the Yen is absolutely huge here for WANGID. It's certainly a card when you're playing a Maxi, when you're playing an Aneromancy, you would anticipate that you are going to have 9 times out of 10, but doesn't have it. And of course, Uridin has that nice synergy with Yennefer as well. Yennefer's going to boost all the cards, but then Uridin is going to reset one of the rows from your opponent anyway. So Shaggy, okay, look, he's not in an ideal spot. The round 1 didn't go that well, but he's got a lot of juice in his hand. Does have Tunnel Drill available as his Aneromancy. You can be nearly guaranteed that will be the card he reaches for. And that is going to answer a lot of the Swarm available for WANGID.
You answer the Swarm, like WANGID can just add more Swarm, right? Because he's got the leader charges, and a lot of the time with your Swarm, you often want it on one row because there's certain cards which, for example, consume something and boost everything on the row. So if you're swarming, your best case scenario is to have all of the Swarm on one row. And on top of that, if Shaggy does answer some of this Swarm, he's making space on that row. Don't know if you want to do that.
Yeah, also like this Kurt, the Purifier could be used as a bounty here. We've got the follow-up Poison as well for Shaggy. I think what he's really going to want to do is get to the maximum amount of coins he possibly can before he plays this drill. Even this means he's going to over-profit a couple of times because he's just over-profited by 1 coin here. And when he plays drill, it's profit 1, so he would go to 10 coins, which you can't. So he's going to sacrifice some points there. But what it'll mean is that before his drill can be answered by this Parasite, he can just remove as many drones as possible. You would expect him to just slam all his leader charges as well and just try and remove as much as he possibly can. Maxi, not doing much here for WANGID, just showing that Yennefer was still quite far away, as was Aneromancy.
And you can put it to the bottom of your deck. Here's Yennefer. It's here, so you wouldn't have found it. But if you want to put it on the bottom of your deck just to feel better and banish her and teach her a lesson, then you can. Yeah, not really how Maxi is played to maximum effect, but that's Gwent. Sometimes you don't get the cards you want. Meanwhile, Kurt, is he going to place a bounty? He's placing a bounty. There's this effect that some people forget Kurt has because he doesn't just purify. Maxi with the bounty. Does Shaggy? I mean, he can tunnel drill that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just adding. It's almost like an extension of 6 coins to the bank, if you like. When this Maxi dies, Shaggy will get 6 coins added to his bank. But of course, probably does have the read, Shaggy, that Yennefer might not be an option because you would have anticipated Yennefer to have been played when Maxi was played. And Maxi, of course, not an ideal card. Shaggy gets that read that WANGID's probably fishing for a gold card or 2 with his last mulligans, because this will almost definitely be one of your first mulligan targets, and you would only really have it in a round 3 hand if it's the last card you drew into because you took a risky mulligan to try and find a gold. One thing WANGID could do here, I doubt it, but he could, if you would like to, use Chimera to eat this Maxi, because then the bounty would just not do anything. But of course, the Chimera is going to be a big Swarm payoff as well. When will we see this tunnel drill as well?
He couldn't have played Chimera because it wasn't on Adrenaline, right? You need Adrenaline 4.
So you can use it as just a consume beforehand. It's just like the boosting part.
So you're saying just don't even. Oh yeah.
I don't think it's the line.
It's not going to trigger anyway.
Yeah.
Eat it. No, I don't think that's the best number of points ever.
It's an
Here
option.
comes the tunnel drill. It's drilling time, boys and girls. And let's see what it is the drill opts to kill. It kills a bug. It kills another bug. It shoots Maxi. Gets bounty. It kills another bug. Kills another bug. Kills another bug.
Absolutely drilled. Is all I can say. Wow.
If you have a bug problem, I highly recommend you phone Tunnel Drill Incorporated. They're based in Novigrad, and I feel like they will deal with your problem very efficiently, given how much money was spent there.
That was something, Jag. That was a lot. Like the bounty just made it even more devastating on finding the Maxi as well. Pretty unbelievable.
And this is where Yennefer would have been sad, right? Because Yennefer boosts everything by 2, so you can boost your bugs out of removal range. If those 2-point bugs are up at 4, it means that using the drill to remove 1s is inefficient because you're losing out on value. And that's not really fun. Well, it's not really fun. It's not really good. So Yennefer, I think not being in hand is absolutely devastating for WANGID, especially against this line pockets list that WANGID let through because he felt like he could beat it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like he's going to beat it now. And
also, like, WANGID's line pockets, which was banned, had that scene, Horson Jr. to hopefully give, like, extra answers to these swarm payoffs. But Yennefer, just the most important card, the best card in this deck. She's sort of the card you build your deck around. So not finding a Neuromancy, very devastating. And Shaggy, very far ahead after this completely filthy tunnel drill play that, honestly, I just can't get it out of my head, Jag. Like, wow.
Yeah, that card got nerfed, you guys. It got nerfed. It's fine now. With that said, Bone Talisman playing for a decent chunk of points. Philippa gonna kidnap Triss. Is Shaggy secretly Team Triss? He is. He says, you know what? You don't want her. You're Team Shani. I'll take her. Come over here, Triss. And Triss makes her way to Novigrad. 46 to 56. Gord to Erden, and that is a sad Erden.
Yeah, absolutely not what you're looking for. Of course, Gord is going to improve the Erden, but not doing enough, unfortunately, for WANGID. Missing the Yennefer, getting drilled, just proving too much. Had a lot of confidence he was going to take it, missed the Yennefer, and it proved to be fatal.
Okay, so unsurprisingly, Shaggy on blue coin with Nilfgaard versus WANGID on red. Leader abilities, once again, Yennefer top tier. Wolfram can get in the bin.
Yeah, again, like this matchup, if I was to place bets on just strictly the matchup, I would say that Arrakis Queen rather, should do pretty well in this one. But of course, we've already seen that isn't always necessarily the most important thing. WANGID going to be very relieved to see this Neuromancy in his hand in round 1. Of course, missed it the whole game last time. That is a huge difference already for WANGID. Just the consistency of his deck has just gone through the roof. On the side of Shaggy, he's got a couple of these sergeants. He hits his masquerade ball. He's got the hunting packs. Just 1 poison. Potentially the option to find 1 through Vigo, though, as well.
It's not the round 1 hand you want for Nilfgaard, really, I don't think. You've got 2 sergeants. You've only got the 1 emissary. You've got 1 poison. Hunting pack is nice because you can thin it. But it's not really ideal. Like, you don't have things like the Slave Hunter, for example, to deal damage to squash some bugs. Meanwhile, Dorgrivel quite swiftly locking up that Nausicaa Sergeant. Turns out that there is a second Sergeant in the ranks, so we may see that come out to play just as an engine. But it's not the round 1 hand maybe Nilfgaard loves, right? You like to have a couple poisons. You like to have a bit of flexibility in the way that you play. You don't want to play Usurper in round 1, so he's not really great to have.
Same with the ball as well. Yeah, just the longer this round goes on, the more awkward the hand will get for our Nilfgaardian friend here, with just the 1 poison as well. I love to see that Doragray, by the way, is the go-to lock in this Arrakis Swarm deck. Obviously, a man that looks after lots of animals and things like that, or a mage that looks after animals. It's good to see, he's sort of finding his place in with the spiders here. And the vampires as well, because Crimson Curse coming in, of course, again, a 16-point play in total if the bleeding gets full value, being used in the front row to threaten this engine of Shaggy. So Shaggy can either play into this, or he could potentially just row stack in the back and let his sergeant die to this Crimson Curse.
Hunting Pack, an easy card to play against Arrakis one because of those doomed Arrakis, right? There's always going to be status. And I guess just opting to sacrifice the Nausicaa Sergeant to an extent, or maybe just stop it from going too tall, right? Sometimes you just don't want a tall unit if you're worried about certain cards. Heatwave, for example, being something that could remove something tall. If you let the damage hit it, then it ain't going to be that big.
Yeah, just to touch on something, I can see the world champ in the chat talking about. Paj is talking about the coup de grace and the leader interactions. Coup de grace being able to be used on Uridan and Yennefer. So you could, if the Araka Swarm player uses Yennefer, you could then coup it and use her offensively to sort of reverse the effect she had, as well as being able to coup Uridan and for devastating value, as well as the leader as well. Being able to find those cards mean it's very awkward for WANGID to sort of play around that. The line that Paj suggested in the chat is maybe just calling in Yennefer from a Neuromancy, but that would of course give Shaggy's leader access to a Nero, so no real fantastic way of playing around it. This leader definitely going to help out compared to other Nilfgaard leaders in this matchup.
Yeah, there's a lot of spicy targets for the Nilfgaard leader. Triss also not bad. There's enough special cards out there that you can see value from. You've got the Bone Talismans that you can play for yourself, for example. And Nilfgaard are a deck that's known to have a decent number of units on the board. Things with like Usurper, for example, being pretty spicy. So WANGID has to be a bit careful with how he sequences his hand to try and avoid the value of double cross in this matchup.
Not something you see massively often, which is an informant being used against Araka Swarm, but actually finding the synergy, of course, there with the Indrega eggs. Could have eaten the Sergeant as well, which would have denied the bleeding, but of course it would shut that engine off and also play further into Tool Punish. Round 1 being fiercely contested, but Shaggy's hand, as we mentioned, is going to get awkward the longer this round goes on.
Yeah, whereas WANGID's hand tends to get better and better as more and more units appear on the board. The Duchess, the informants are a little bit annoying though, because it does disrupt that row. It blocks a space for, say, a little baby Arrakis. So it does deny points in that capacity as well. So it's decent. The bleed not going where the bleed wanted to go, or at least for WANGID, hitting that little Arrakis there and bleeding a 1-point unit to death, not as impactful as, say, hitting the 8 or the 5.
Remember, the winner of this game of Gwent books their place at Open number 2. It is one of the biggest games of Gwent that these two players will play all year, because everything depends on this. Okay, it's not over for them, but win one game of Gwent, qualify for an Open. That is humongous. And if you lose, maybe you don't. Who knows? Lots of pressure.
Shaggy opting there for the pass, kind of saying, you know what, you're just going to keep jamming points at this stage. I'm on blue coin. I need to be a bit careful with my card advantage. Find the pass where I can. The Chimera, for example, being utilized there, gets the points up plus the bleeding. And WANGID also had Bone Talisman in hand, right? So he had options. He had the Behemoth. He had ways of starting to jam points. And we talked about Shaggy's hand getting awkward, and this was the point where that happened.
Yeah, always nice to get round control against Masquerade Ball, that is for sure, if you're WANGID. And just looking at the draws for both players, Shaggy's hand looking very gold heavy, does have that follow-up poison with Cupbearer Poison, doesn't tend to find the most value in this particular matchup, but certainly nice to have the option. Battle Prep being the last card found, probably not ideal either, and WANGID pushing into this round. Coup de grace, leader ability, both very threatening in this round, and will have a huge bearing on how WANGID tries to play this game.
You have to be careful playing into round 2 against Nilfgaard because of things like invocation. You play a target that they can invocate, they can then draw into it. So that is one thing that WANGID wants to be maybe a little bit cautious about. But on the flip side, yes, you have a nice long round as Swarm, but you also have quite a nice short round. And Shaggy really respecting this bleed, opting to play the Usurper there. Also, while there's space on the board to play it, right? Because if one of those rows gets filled, then you're losing out points. So using that while the sun shines, making hay while the sun shines, playing the Usurper, getting points on the board, and just playing tempo for tempo. Meanwhile, Behemoth, we talked about the row being full. Well, I did. Now it's full. That was the thing I was talking about.
Yeah, and Behemoth as well, just, of course, when with Yen as well, it swarms the board, it adds points. Monsters has sort of two ways you can go with Swarm. You have the insects, where Behemoth's a massive payoff, and you have the rats, where you have the Morvard. But this Behemoth, not only is it points, but it also adds to the Swarm, which just increases the points of Bone Talismans and Yennefers. And really going to be interesting to see when Shaggy decides to use his leader ability.
I see battle prep being used there, just saying, you know what, I don't mind going back to even cards. Because this is the thing, Shaggy is a card up. So if he stays ahead, WANGID could lose a card. That's something to be kind of aware of here, but saying, you know what, this is a mediocre card, I'm just going to play it. Meanwhile, Spontaneous Evolution being utilized now, spawning more and more units on the board. What is that, 14 units on the board? So that's a 14-point Bone Talisman? Ugh.
Still no leader either from Shaggy. Of course, we know WANGID has the Yennefer in the deck and the Uridan in the deck, and it's going to have to choose between them. It's going to be Yennefer, but then the coup threatens as well.
It's tempting, right? The leader's tempting, because if you think they have Yennefer in hand, you're like, oh, I can kill all of these bugs.
Certainly is.
It's like a bait.
Here comes Cupbearer.
Not yet. Not yet. We just see Cupbearer and a poison.
And maybe WANGID could just take the line to not play the Yennefer, not play the Uridan this round, knowing that Coup is a big threat, and could just try and swarm the board and get points through Bone Talismans. Maybe was looking for a Bone Talisman, doesn't find it. Maybe he's going to overswarm and even block the Yennefer potentially here. They're going to overswarm.
How does Shaggy trigger Masquerade Ball this round?
Oh my goodness, the board is full. I guess with an Neuromancy from WANGID, right? Seems like the only way.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like he'd maybe have to go for it. And there's but it's too late. You know, you've gone for it at the wrong moment. There's the Neuromancy, and that is absolutely spicy. You also know this is a nice double cross because you know exactly what WANGID has. You know he has a Heatwave and a Neuromancy and a Bone Talisman. So you know the exact state of his hand. So you can kind of use that information to predict how you want to play. The issue is that he didn't play that Masquerade Ball first. But like, when would you play Masquerade Ball not having any triggers? You wouldn't. You know, you wouldn't do that. He should have played Ball first, but there's no situation where you would do that because you don't have any aristocrats. So you have to go with this route. You go into your Neuromancy, but there's no space for spies.
Yeah.
Right?
And
this is a weird board state.
And Shaggy knows, there's the coup as well. So that opens up the opportunity for Yennefer. However, the back row is full, and I don't think it would be a very good play for WANGID to Yennefer the front row and destroy all his bugs. But there's the big bad boy Bone Talisman. Not sure if we've got another one available through a Neuromancy. But if we do, it is going to be a lot of points indeed. And Shaggy not being able to proc the ball. The poison would open space for the Yennefer.
Oh, this is horrendous for Shaggy. Like, he doesn't want to poison. He doesn't want to make space for Yennefer. WANGID, he knows has Heatwave onto his Usurper. Like, there's perfect information here. So if you're Shaggy, you've got a dead Masquerade Ball. You've got an invocation onto nothing. You've got this experimental remedy onto trash. Like, there's so much trash. It's just, I feel like it's going to be 2-0. And I love a 2-0, but it's kind of a sad 2-0.
Yeah, and usually what you would expect to see is the Masquerade Ball being played first and then the leader. But of course, didn't even have the option to go a Neuromancy into Joachim or into Roderick because there was no space to put them. Here is the and there it is.
That would be a Bone Talisman.
The second, right? 18 points for just 7 provisions. Wow, that's a lot of points. And
then there's Heatwave. So I guess if you're Shaggy, you maybe play Masquerade Ball to try and encourage WANGID to Heatwave that. But then you've got what? 11-point poison and a 6-point Neuromancy?
And WANGID doesn't even take the bait. There's the poison. And the invo is not going to be enough, Jag. And WANGID is the first player to book himself into Gwent Open number 2 in June. Shaggy, the man that has been in all the qualifier top 4s, has gone to the losers bracket where he still has an opportunity. We will be watching him play later on. But WANGID takes it 3-2. The man that banned Skelliger the whole tournament, He played against Align Pockets the whole time, and he did not lose a single series.